It's the Martha Zoller Show, presented by Gainesville Mechanical. From the Northeast Georgia Health System studio in downtown Gainesville on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Wasn't something like COVID where no one saw it was coming. The forecast had already told us it takes about 30 minutes to an hour to get frostbite or hypothermia. So while he was parading around doing press conference in this custom jacket, they did a profile piece on that, by the way, Sean. Everybody was talking about the custom jacket. He did no planning at all. And now you got people that are dead as a result of it. The city looks a mess. You can't even get the snow removed off the sidewalk. Trash everywhere. The city was a dump before this, Sean, and it's only getting worse. This is not a test. This is game time. And as we know, Sean, he wasn't prepared.
So the ice storm came through New York 2 weeks ago when it came around here, and this was kind of the first big test. And Mom Donnie and I had noticed this too because I was scrolling the New York Times that they did this big puff piece on his jacket that he wore for his press conference, but didn't talk at all. There's been hardly any coverage of the fact they are now, what is this, Tuesday, 10 days out from this ice storm. And there's still roads that are not passable on the side streets in Manhattan and in the boroughs. There's no garbage pickup, so they've got like a mountain of garbage standing outside these buildings. And then 16 people died because he reversed the order that every mayor before him had of telling people that are homeless when it's freezing, when it's below freezing, that they have to come inside, having places for homeless people to come inside. And 16 people have died in the last 10 days from exposure that are homeless. And to me, he talked about the warm embrace of collectivism in his inauguration speech. Well, is this the warm embrace? 16 homeless people dying? That just doesn't seem right. And there's another comment from News Nation where they talk about this thing also.
Okay, Batya, there are mountains of garbage, some of them 8 feet high, and this is all more than a week after the snow fell.
I don't care about any of that, Liz. I care about the fact that 16 people are dead. 16 human beings are dead because this nincompoop decided to allow them to keep living on the streets when the temperatures dropped to sub-zero. So much of what passes for progressive compassion, the stuff that makes them feel morally superior to the rest of us, actually incentivizes and creates unbelievable amounts of cruelty and suffering, whether it's abolish ICE, the open border where women are getting raped crossing the Darien Gap, children are being trafficked into this country, whether it's defund the police, siding with criminals, all of this stuff that makes them feel holier than thou.
So we've got to understand what's at stake here in this next election, okay? We've already got Democrats saying they can't wait to get Trump out of power so they can, let's see, what did she say? Rebuild the chaos was the phrase that she used in the video. I don't know what rebuild the chaos means. I mean, that seems like, not a good phrase to put together. But it doesn't surprise me because I just really, I'm very frustrated with the completely different silos that people live in and get their information. There's not even, if you follow certain kinds of information, you don't get anything. Now, in my feed, now granted, I don't get all my news from social media. I watch social media. I look at X. I don't really do much Instagram or TikTok because I'm old. And I don't use Facebook for news. Okay, I just don't. Now, I will go to maybe if it's an official site for the city of Gainesville or something, I'll look for a closing list there or something like that. But as far as getting your news, when a friend of mine comes in and says, well, I read it on Facebook, isn't this true? No, it's not. So it might be. Let's just put it that way. But don't take that as your first source. Okay, Facebook should not be your first source. So you've got to read other things, and you got to go into enemy territory. Okay? You've got to read the things. So I've started reading Charlie Kirk's last book, Stop in the Name of God. That was one of the books I was reading last night. And it's really something you should read, because he talks about very early in the book about how he was so involved in everything, and he was reading everything, and he was going everywhere, and he was doing everything, and he was on top of everything, and he was afraid to miss a message, and he was afraid to miss anything, because that's the world we got raised in. I mean, I'm an immigrant to this world. You know, I'm a digital immigrant because I started my work life without a computer on my desk, and you know, the only way you could send a message to someone was to mail it to them or call them on the phone. Okay, so I'm a digital immigrant, but I was able to mix my life of raising children and going back to work because of the digital footprint. Okay, so there's good and bad to everything. Okay, the good was I could take a part-time job. I could be home by 1 o'clock. I stayed home for a number of years, but I could take a part-time job. I could be at home by 1 o'clock. I could be there when the bus got home, making the snacks and letting the kids get in and doing their homework. To them, nothing had changed because, you know, unless they were homesick or something, nothing had changed. So but because I had a brick laptop and a BlackBerry, I could check my messages and I could get back to people later in the day. And I got sucked into this. This is why I can recognize it, where I was getting back to people right away. I was like the coolest person ever as far as that. But then it got to where I was looking at messages till 10 o'clock at night. I was reading email, late in the night. I was getting up in the middle of the night and thinking about it and doing that. And it'll make you crazy. And it will also make you crazy when you check all these different news sources and you see what is blatantly wrong, what is blatantly a lie and not factual, and that once the facts, you always used to think, okay, well, they got it wrong the first time. Once the facts are revealed, then they'll start reporting the facts instead. That doesn't happen because news agencies and news shows have become profit centers. I'm not against profit. I'm a capitalist, okay? But what happened after 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes was the first news show that made money, okay? And after that, news departments that went from, hey, the news is the news. We report the news how it is. We don't care about advertisers because we're not a profit center. We let the entertainment side be the profit center, and they pay for us. That's the way it used to be. And then it started shifting over, well, hey, we can make money at news. You know, it's like weather systems make a lot of money because we can get eyeballs to the television. That was before we had all the other ways we got eyeballs. So we turned these things into profit centers. That, in turn, really raised the salaries of the journalists and the anchors because they were making more money. And that, in turn, put those journalists and anchors, instead of just being regular people that were covering the news, they were living in the really nice neighborhoods, and their kids were going to the fancy private schools, and they were getting invited to the best parties. And if they spoke out too much or didn't follow the corporate line, they wouldn't get invited to those parties anymore. Their kid might not be able to get into that fancy private school, and they weren't making millions of dollars a year. Journalists used to be people like Ernie Pyle who hitched a ride with someone that was going to war and then wrote about it and then had to find somewhere to file their story, and they were definitely not upper middle income or rich. Definitely not. I mean, it was a labor of love. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't make more money, and I'm not saying that there aren't people that were worth that money. I mean, I think Barbara Walters was worth every nickel she got. But she was the first $1 million contract, by the way. But because we turned news into entertainment, not the other way around, we've got a lot of false information out there. And that's why you need, in my view, you need a grounding of faith where you know where to go to get the truth. You need to understand what people are talking about, and you need to talk to people you disagree with, because there's a nugget in there that you might not know and that you need to go check on. It's always better to have to defend your point of view to somebody you disagree with, because that's how you become strong. We'll be back.